All right, so are you ready to dive into some seriously weird news with me today?
Always.
Okay, awesome. Remember Enron?
Oh, yeah.
The energy giant that crashed and burned back in 2001?
Of course.
Well, guess what? They're back.
Really?
Sort of. And get this, they just announced this totally wild new product called, wait for it, the Enron Egg.
What?
Yeah, you heard that right. The company that's like infamous for its massive scandal is back, and they're claiming to have created a micro-nuclear reactor.
Oh, wow.
That you can just stick right there in your home. Yeah. We're going to be looking at a recent article from KPRC Click to Houston that breaks it all down. So let's dive in and try to figure out what in the world is actually going on here.
Right.
So what was your first reaction when you heard about this whole Enron thing?
Well, I mean, it definitely caught a lot of us off guard.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
Back in December of 2024, Enron just suddenly reappeared.
Out of nowhere.
With a website and this whole, like, rebrand, it seemed like.
Yeah.
But it became pretty apparent pretty quickly that this wasn't your, typical corporate comeback story.
It felt different.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, a lot of folks pointed out right away that it all felt very satirical, which brings us to this Enron Egg launch on January 6th, 2025.
Right.
They're claiming this thing can power a home for a whole decade.
Wow.
They even put out a product launch video.
Really?
It's like a parody of those old Steve Jobs presentations.
Oh, no way.
Black turtleneck and all,
Oh.
So what do you think about the claims they're making about this Enron Egg? I mean, are they even trying to be believable at this point?
Well, I mean, the claims themselves are just like outlandishly over the top.
Yeah.
In the launch video, Enron CEO Connor Gatos,
In quotes?
yeah, in quotes,
Yeah.
he talks about how they're going to partner with FEMA
Oh, wow.
to get these Enron eggs to first responders around the world. I mean, the whole thing is just dripping with irony,
Okay. So it's pretty clear that they're going for satire here. But what do you make of the fact that they chose this whole, elaborate product launch as their method for satire? Is it effective, or is it just too much?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting how they're playing with this idea of a tech product launch.
Okay.
Specifically the kind we've come to expect from, Silicon Valley.
Right.
There's this whole culture of hype
Yeah.
and over-promising
Oh, totally.
when it comes to new technologies, especially in the energy sector.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So you could argue that Enron is kind of poking fun at that, at the way companies try to sell us on these grand solutions that may or may not actually, live up to the hype.
So are they targeting the energy industry specifically, or is it more about tech culture in general, or maybe even a combination of both?
Well, I mean, just consider the fact that a micronuclear reactor, even if it were technically feasible, it would raise a whole host of safety and environmental concerns.
Oh, it's absolutely. Yeah.
It's almost like they're taking this idea of technological progress
Right.
to its most absurd extreme.
Yeah.
Which is a common tactic in satire.
Right. This Enron Egg is so obviously impossible.
Yeah.
It kind of forces you to step back and think about all the things we're told to believe about new technologies.
Exactly. And there's also this layer of irony here in the fact that this is coming from Enron.
Right.
A company that was once, synonymous with the energy industry.
Yeah.
Albeit for all the wrong reasons.
Right.
Now they're, seemingly back to satirize the very industry they were a part of.
It's kind of like they're commenting on their own legacy.
Yeah.
While simultaneously poking fun at the current state of the energy sector.
Exactly.
So we've got Enron potentially using satire to comment on both the energy industry and tech culture.
Yeah.
But the article also brought up another interesting point.
Okay.
They compared Enron to companies like The Onion, which are known for their, straightforward satirical news articles.
Right.
So what makes Enron's approach different is this whole Enron Egg bit simply too elaborate.
Well, that's where things get really fascinating.
Okay.
The article's author, they wondered if this, elaborate product launch format might just be too much.
Okay.
Is the joke getting lost in all the theatrics? I think that's a valid concern. I mean, satire is often most effective when it's subtle, right?
Yeah.
When it makes you laugh, but also kind of makes you think.
Right.
So the question is an Enron, striking that balance?
Yeah.
Or are they just kind of muddying the waters with this whole elaborate performance?
I see what you mean. If people are too focused on trying to figure out if it's a joke or a real product launch,
Yeah.
they might miss the underlying message entirely.
Precisely. And then, there's the question of Enron's own history.
Right.
Given their past, some people might be a little hesitant to take anything they do at face value.
Yeah.
There's this sense that maybe they're just trying to capitalize on their notoriety.
Yeah.
Use this, satirical approach as a way to kind of rehabilitate their image.
Just like, can we even trust their intentions?
Right.
Are they genuinely trying to make a statement about the energy industry or tech culture? Or is this just a clever marketing ploy? It's hard to say for sure.
Yeah, and that ambiguity might actually be part of the point.
Okay.
Maybe they're trying to force us to confront our own skepticism, question our assumptions about, corporations and their motives.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this whole thing is like more layered than it might appear at first glance. It's not just a simple joke. It's playing with our expectations and making us question like everything.
Exactly. And that's where the real power of satire lies. It can hold a mirror up to society and make us confront uncomfortable truths.
Right.
But, to your earlier point, if the message gets lost in the noise, then the satire fails.
Yeah.
It's a delicate balancing act.
So how do you think this is landing with the public? Is Enron's satire actually hitting its mark, or is it just confusing people?
It's probably a bit of both. I mean, some people are definitely getting the joke and appreciating the irony. They're engaging in discussions about the energy industry, about, the dangers of technological hype, about the blurring lines between reality and satire.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that's a win for Enron regardless of their true intentions.
But you're saying there are others who are just scratching their heads.
Absolutely. I mean, some people might just see this as a, silly stunt.
Right.
A desperate attempt to get attention.
Okay.
They might not even bother to think about any deeper meaning.
Right.
And for them, the satire is probably falling flat.
I suppose it all comes down to individual interpretation.
Yeah.
Some people are more attuned to satire. You know, they're ready to pick up on those nuances and layers of meaning. Others might take things more literally and miss the joke entirely.
It's also important to remember that not all satire is created equal.
Okay.
I mean, some satirical pieces are, more accessible than others. They might rely on, broader humor.
Yeah.
Or more obvious targets.
Right.
Enron's approach with this elaborate Enron Egg launch is definitely more niche.
Yeah.
It requires a certain level of awareness and understanding of the context.
So if you're not familiar with Enron's history, or if you're not immersed in the world of tech product launches and energy innovation, you might not even pick up on the satire.
Right.
It could just fly right over your head.
Exactly. And that's a risk Enron is taking with this approach.
Yeah.
They're targeting a specific audience. And they're not afraid to alienate those who don't get it.
Which is kind of bold when you think about it. Most companies would shy away from that kind of ambiguity. They'd want their message to be clear and appealing to everyone. But Enron seems to be embracing the chaos.
And that's what makes this whole thing so fascinating. It's unpredictable, it's thought-provoking, and it's forcing us to confront our own assumptions about, corporations, satire, and the world around us.
Okay, so we've unpacked the satire, the potential targets, the effectiveness, the ambiguity. But what does all this mean for our listener? Why should they care about this whole Enron Egg saga?
Well, I think there are a few key takeaways here. First, it's a reminder to be, critical consumers of information.
Right.
We're bombarded with messages and narratives every day. And it's important to be able to, discern what's real, what's satire, and what might be somewhere in between.
It feels like we're living in this age of information overload.
Yeah.
Where reality and satire are constantly blurring together.
Uh-huh.
How do we even begin to navigate that?
I mean, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? This Enron situation, I think, really highlights that challenge.
Yeah.
It forces us to think about, source credibility, motives, and the different ways, information can be packaged and presented.
And the fact that Enron is the one doing this just adds another layer of complexity.
Right.
It's making a lot of people question their own instincts.
Yeah.
It's like, can we even laugh at this? Should we be taking it seriously?
And that discomfort,
Yeah.
that questioning can actually be a good thing.
Okay.
It can lead to more thoughtful engagement with the information we're consuming.
So it's not just about figuring out whether Enron is being genuine or not. It's about using this as an opportunity to sharpen our own critical thinking skills.
Exactly. Think of it like a mental workout. We're flexing those, critical thinking muscles.
Yeah.
Learning to analyze information from different angles.
Yeah.
And becoming more aware of the techniques used to influence our perceptions.
That's a great way to frame it. So instead of getting bogged down in whether this is a, quote, good or bad use of satire, we can focus on what it's teaching us about the media landscape and our own roles as consumers of information.
Precisely. And this whole Enron Egg thing, I think, is a prime example of how satire can be a powerful tool for sparking those conversations and encouraging that deeper level of engagement.
It's definitely got people talking, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Whether you find it funny, confusing, or thought-provoking, there's no denying that Enron has managed to, capture our attention and get us thinking about important issues.
And at the end of the day, isn't that one of the goals of satire? To challenge the status quo, provoke discussion, and maybe even inspire change.
All right, so to wrap things up, let's bring it back to our listener. What's the one key takeaway you want them to walk away with from this deep dive into the Enron Egg saga?
I'd say it's this. Don't be afraid to question everything. Whether it's a news article, a product launch, or even a satirical stunt like this one, take the time to consider the source, the message, and the potential motives behind it.
And don't be afraid to have a little fun with it too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Sometimes laughter can be the best way to confront absurdity and spark a meaningful conversation.
Absolutely. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and as always, keep diving deep.
Thanks for listening.